As Bayo walked into the school compound and saw the pretty schoolgirls, a smile played on his lips. I think I'm going to enjoy my stay here. In the bustling city of Lagos, Nigeria, lived a handsome young man named Bayo. He was the only son of Madam Alice, a wealthy businesswoman who had lost her husband shortly before Bayo's birth. From the moment Bayo came into the world, he became Madam Alice's golden boy, her sole consolation in a life marked by loss. Madam Alice's house was a grand mansion in the exclusive Lekki Phase 1 area. The walls were adorned with expensive artwork, and imported furniture filled every room. It was in this lap of luxury that Bayo grew up, never wanting for anything. As Bayo grew up, it became clear that Madam Alice's love for her son had no bounds. Whatever Bayo wanted, he got. When he was just 5 years old, Bayo threw a tantrum in a toy store, demanding the latest video game console. "Mommy, I want it! I want it now!" Bayo screamed, his face red with anger. Other shoppers looked on in disapproval, but Madam Alice simply smiled and said, "Of course, my darling. Anything for you." She turned to the shocked shop owner and said, "We'll take 2, one for his room and one for the living room." This pattern continued throughout Bayo's childhood. Whenever he did something wrong, Madam Alice would brush it off, proudly declaring, "My son is always right." This unwavering support, while born from love, would set the stage for a series of events that would change their lives forever. One day, when Bayo was 10 years old, Madam Alice's friend Amina came to visit. Amina was a stern-looking woman with kind eyes who had known Alice since their university days. As they sat in the lavish living room, sipping expensive wine, Bayo burst in, demanding attention. "Mom, I want to go to Millennium Park next week. Book the tickets now," Bayo ordered, not even acknowledging Amina's presence. Madam Alice beamed at her son. "Of course, my prince. I'll make the bookings right away." As Bayo strutted out of the room, Amina couldn't hold her tongue any longer. "Alice, you are going to spoil this boy." Madam Alice's smile faded, replaced by a defensive frown. "What do you mean, Amina? I'm just showing my son how much I love him." Amina leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Love isn't about giving a child everything they want. It's about teaching them right from wrong, about preparing them for the real world." "The real world," Madam Alice scoffed. "My Bayo will never have to worry about the real world. I've made sure of that." Amina shook her head sadly. "Alice, listen to me. I've seen this before. Children who grow up like this, they struggle when they face real challenges. They don't know how to handle disappointment or failure." But Madam Alice, like she had done with many others who expressed similar worries, dismissed Amina's words. "Nonsense. My Bayo is perfect just the way he is. He'll never have to face failure because I'll always be there to make sure he succeeds." Amina left that day, her heart heavy with worry for both her friend and the young boy who was being set up for a hard fall. Little did she know that Amina's words would prove prophetic sooner than anyone could have imagined. When Bayo was 20, Madam Alice came home one day to find her househelp, Linda, crying uncontrollably in the kitchen. Linda was a young woman from a poor family who had been working for Madam Alice for about a year. She was hardworking and quiet, which was why her current state alarmed Madam Alice. "Linda, what on earth is the matter?" Madam Alice demanded, more annoyed than concerned. Through her tears, Linda managed to choke out, "Madam, he got me pregnant." For a moment, Madam Alice stood frozen, her mind refusing to process what she had just heard. Then, instead of listening to Linda or considering the possibility that her son might have done something wrong, Madam Alice flew into a rage. "How dare you?" she screamed, her face contorted with anger. "How dare you lie about my precious son?" Linda fell to her knees, pleading, "Please, madam, I'm not lying. I didn't want to, but he insisted and I was afraid to lose my job." But Madam Alice wouldn't hear it. "You ungrateful witch, after all we've done for you, you're just trying to trap my son, aren't you? To get your hands on our money." After several minutes of this abuse, Madam Alice stopped, breathing heavily. She glared down at the sobbing Linda and spat out, "Get up. We're going to put an end to this nonsense right now." Without a second thought, Madam Alice called her personal doctor, Dr. Eze. "Doctor, I need you to perform a procedure. Reach deep into her and rip the bastard out." Then she turned to her driver, who had been watching the scene unfold with wide, fearful eyes. "Akin, take this girl to Dr. Ez's clinic, now." As Linda was bundled into the car, still crying and now begging, "Please, madam, please don't do this." Madame Alice turned a deaf ear. In her mind, she was protecting her son, preserving the bright future she had always envisioned for him. As Linda underwent the painful procedure to terminate her pregnancy, she cried and cursed Bayo. "My God will punish you, Bayo," she sobbed. "You and your mother will know no peace for what you've done to me." This incident marked the beginning of a disturbing pattern. Over the next 2 years, Bayo impregnated Linda 3 times. Each time, Madame Alice cleaned up the mess, forcing Linda to terminate the pregnancies. She refused to see the monster her son was becoming, always finding ways to justify his action. "Boys will be boys," she would say to herself, willfully ignoring the pain and trauma she was inflicting on Linda and enabling in her son. After the 3rd incident, Linda finally gathered the courage to leave. As she packed her meager belongings, Madame Alice confronted her. "Where do you think you're going?" Madame Alice demanded. Linda, her eyes red from crying but her voice steady, replied, "I'm leaving, madam. I can't do this anymore. What you and your son have done to me is not right." Madame Alice's face hardened. "If you breathe a word of this to anyone, I'll make sure you never work in this city again. Do you understand?" Linda looked at Madame Alice, and for the first time, the older woman saw not fear, but pity in the young girl's eyes. "I understand, madame, but remember, every action has its consequences. Someday, you and Bayo will have to face yours." With that, Linda walked out of the house, leaving Madame Alice to wrestle with doubts she quickly suppressed. Meanwhile, Bayo remained blissfully unaware of the pain he was causing. He continued his carefree lifestyle, partying with friends, spending his mother's money, and treating people as if they existed solely for his pleasure. After graduating from university with mediocre grades, thanks to substantial donations from his mother to the school, Bayo had to participate in the 1-year National Youth Service Corps (NYSC) program. He was posted to a girls' secondary school called Delight Secondary School in the western part of Nigeria. The night before he was to leave, Bayo lounged in his room, surrounded by expensive gadgets and designer clothes. He was trying to decide whether to pack. Madame Alice knocked on his door. "Bayo, my darling, are you ready for tomorrow?" Bayo groaned dramatically. "Mom, do I really have to go? Can't you talk to someone? Get me posted somewhere in Lagos instead." Madame Alice sat on the edge of his bed, patting his hand. "I'm sorry, my love, but even I couldn't change this. It's only for a year. Think of it as an adventure." Bayo rolled his eyes. "Some adventure? Stuck in the middle of nowhere, teaching a bunch of village girls." Now, Madame Alice chided gently. "It won't be that bad. And remember, you're my son. You can handle anything." As she left the room, Bayo flopped back on his bed, already plotting how to make his year of service as easy and pleasurable as possible. The next morning, as Bayo's driver loaded his numerous suitcases into the car, Madame Alice fretted over her son. "Are you sure you have everything, darling? Your ATM card, your new phone?" Bayo nodded impatiently. "Yes, Mom, I've got everything. Can we go now?" As they said their goodbyes, neither of them could have imagined how this year would change their lives forever. This was the first time Bayo would be far away from his mother, and the thought initially made him sad. However, his sadness quickly turned to excitement when he arrived at Delight Secondary School. As Bayo walked into the school compound and saw the pretty schoolgirls, a smile played on his lips. "I think I'm going to enjoy my stay here," he thought to himself, already plotting his next conquest. The school principal, Mr. Olu, a stern-looking man in his 50s, welcomed Bayo to the school. "Welcome to Delight Secondary School, Mr. Bayo. I trust you find your stay here both challenging and rewarding." Bayo put on his most charming smile. "Thank you, sir. I'm looking forward to making a positive impact." Mr. Olu nodded approvingly, unaware of the thoughts running through Bayo's mind. "Excellent. Let's get you settled in and then I'll show you to your class." After the necessary documentation was completed, Mr. Olu led Bayo to his assigned classroom. "You'll be teaching physics to our senior girls," Mr. Olu explained. "It's a critical subject for their final exams, so we're counting on you to prepare them well." Bayo's eyes lit up at the news. Physics was a subject he knew well from his university studies, and the thought of teaching it to senior girls only added to his excitement. As they entered the classroom, 30 pairs of eyes turned to look at them. Mr. Olu cleared his throat. "Girls, this is Mr. Bayo. He'll be your new physics teacher for this academic year. I expect you to show him the utmost respect and dedication to your studies." Bayo scanned the room, noting the admiring glances from many of the girls. "Hello everyone, I'm excited to be here and to help you all excel in physics. I have a feeling this is going to be a great year." A collective sigh seemed to sweep through the classroom, and Bayo knew he had them hooked. Among the senior class students were 3 girls, Joyce, Beauty, and Precious, the self-proclaimed PGS, or prettiest girls in school. As Bayo began his first lesson, he made sure to create the perfect first impression. He showcased his intelligence and charm, peppering his lecture with jokes and relatable examples that had the class hanging on his every word. "Now, who can tell me about Newton's laws of motion?" Bayo asked, his eyes scanning the classroom. Beauty's hand shot up. "Sir, Newton's first law states that an object will remain at rest or in uniform motion in a straight line unless acted upon by an external force." Bayo's eyes locked with Beauty's. "Excellent, Miss." "Beauty, sir," she replied, a coy smile playing on her lips. "Well done, Beauty," Bayo said. "It seems I have some bright students in this class." As the lesson progressed, Bayo made sure to engage all the students, but he couldn't help paying extra attention to Beauty and her friends. He could see the admiration in their eyes and planned to use it to his advantage. After class, as the students filed out, Joyce, Beauty, and Precious lingered behind. "Mr. Bayo," Precious said, "we just wanted to say how much we enjoyed your lesson. Physics has never been so interesting. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Physics can be fascinating when you approach it the right way." "We were wondering," Joyce chimed in, "if you might be available for extra tutoring. We want to make sure we're fully prepared for our exams." Bayo pretended to consider for a moment, though internally he was thrilled at the opportunity. "Well, I suppose I could make some time for dedicated students. Why don't we discuss it more after school tomorrow?" The girls nodded eagerly, exchanging excited glances. As they left the classroom, Bayo couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. This was going to be easier than he thought. Over the next few weeks, Bayo's reputation as the coolest teacher in school grew. Students looked forward to his classes, and his good looks and charisma were the talk of the school. But it was the PGS, Joyce, Beauty, and Precious who truly held his attention. Bayo became the girls' favorite teacher, giving them high scores in his subject. One day after class, Bayo called Beauty to stay behind. As the other students filed out, Beauty approached his desk, her heart racing. "You wanted to see me, Mr. Bayo?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Bayo smiled, his eyes roaming over her face. "Yes, Beauty. I wanted to discuss your last test. You've improved significantly," Beauty beamed. "Thank you, sir. I've been studying hard." "I can tell," Bayo said, standing up and moving closer to her. "You know, Beauty, you're one of my brightest students. I think you have a real future in physics if you want it." Beauty blushed, looking down at her feet. "You really think so, sir?" Bayo reached out and lifted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. "I know so. And please, when we're alone, call me Bayo." Beauty's breast caught in her throat. "Oh, okay. Bayo." The moment was interrupted by a knock on the door. It was Mr. Olu, the principal. "Ah, Mr. Bayo," he said, looking between Bayo and Beauty with a slightly furrowed brow. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything." Bayo stepped back smoothly. "Not at all, sir. I was just giving Beauty some extra encouragement. She's shown remarkable improvement." Mr. Olu nodded, though his eyes still held a hint of suspicion. "I see." Mr. Olu turned to Bayo. "Mr. Bayo, I must say, the improvement in our students' physics scores is impressive. Whatever you're doing, it seems to be working." Bayo smiled confidently. "Thank you, sir. I believe in making the subject engaging and relatable." As Mr. Olu left, Bayo smirked to himself. If only the principal knew what he was really up to. Meanwhile, Joyce, Beauty, and Precious were huddled in the girls' bathroom, whispering excitedly. "Did you see how Mr. Bayo looked at me in class today?" Precious gushed. "I swear, he was staring at me the whole time." Joyce rolled her eyes. "Please, he was obviously looking at me." Didn't you notice how he kept using my name in examples? Beauty listened to her friends argue, a secret smile playing on her lips. If only they knew about her private moment with Bayo. As the weeks passed, Bayo's inappropriate behavior escalated. He began offering private tutoring sessions to the PGS, using this time to flirt and make subtle advances, all thanks to their career-minded parents. During one such session at Joyce's house, Bayo sat close to her on the couch, their thighs touching as they pored over a textbook. So you see, Bayo explained, his voice low and intimate. The force of attraction between two objects is inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. Joyce nodded, trying to focus on the words, but distracted by Bayo's proximity. So, the closer they are, the stronger the attraction. Bayo turned to her, their faces inches apart. Exactly, can you feel it? Joyce's breast hitched. I think so. Just then, Joyce's phone buzzed with a text from Beauty. How's the study session going? The moment broken, Joyce pulled back slightly. Maybe we should take a break, Bayo smiled, hiding his frustration. Of course, we've covered a lot today. As Bayo left Joyce's house, he couldn't help but feel a thrill at the game he was playing. He had all three girls wrapped around his finger, each thinking she was special to him. One fateful day, during Miss Carroll's biology lesson, Joyce suddenly felt nauseous. She stood up abruptly. Miss Carroll, she said, her face pale. I don't feel well. May I be excused? Before Miss Carroll could answer, Joyce rushed out of the classroom. Concerned, Miss Carroll continued her lesson, but her worry grew when, a few minutes later, Beauty also asked to be excused, followed shortly by Precious. After class, Miss Carroll found the three girls in the bathroom, all vomiting profusely. Girls, she said gently, is everything all right? Should we go to the school clinic? The three friends exchanged nervous glances before nodding silently. At the school clinic, Dr. Margaret, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, examined the girls one by one. As she finished with Precious, the last of the three, a grave expression settled on her face. Girls, she said carefully, I need to ask you something and I want you to be honest with me. Is there any chance any of you might be pregnant? The silence that followed was deafening. Dr. Margaret's suspicion had been correct. She sent their samples to the lab, and all three girls tested positive for pregnancy.
This story teaches us a powerful lesson about the dangers of unchecked privilege, poor parenting, and the abuse of power. From childhood, Bayo was raised without discipline or accountability. His mother, Madame Alice, believed that shielding him from consequences was an act of love, but in reality, she was setting him up for failure, allowing him to grow into a selfish and reckless young man who had no regard for others. The consequences of such irresponsible upbringing became evident when Bayo, now a young adult, exploited his position as a teacher to manipulate and take advantage of innocent schoolgirls. His actions were not just morally wrong. They had real and lasting consequences, leading to heartbreak, shame, and ruined futures. This story serves as a warning. Parents must teach discipline and accountability. True love is about preparing children for the real world, not shielding them from consequences. Power should never be abused. Authority figures like teachers have a responsibility to protect and guide, not exploit those in their care. Every action has consequences. No matter how much privilege or protection someone has, justice will eventually catch up with those who harm others. In the end, Bayo's downfall was inevitable because life always holds people accountable for their actions. This is a call for parents to raise their children with responsibility, for young people to recognize and resist manipulation, and for society to hold wrongdoers accountable. True success comes from integrity, not privilege.